Tell me if I'm wrong, but not only in that last statement, the tax revenue is greater than the public spending and debt retirement within the time frame allowed.
Correct. Correct.
But then again, that years to pay off the debt.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I have a handout that will show you that. It gets pretty convoluted depending on the type of TIF, if it's a industrial TIF or a blighted area TIF or a mixed-use TIF. There's different time frames for the TIF. It used to be pretty simple. You had 7 years to spend money, and you had 16 years to pay it off, total of 23 years. So you spent money for seven years, you had 16 years of income coming in to pay off the debt that you incurred in the first 7 years. Now you can make expenditures up to the very last year of the TIF, but in the end you got to pay off the TIF. So if you don't pay off the debt that's generated by the TIF, then it goes back in the operating budget, which is what nobody wants to do. You want the revenue from the increased development to pay off the debt in the TIF. Okay, here's just a simple example. As I said, when you create a TIF, it's a hypothetical TIF, you examine what is the existing tax base in that area. So in this example, the existing TIF is the value of real estate in the TIF is $100,000. Sometimes we see this number go down because we have to do demolitions. So we demolish a piece of property. We have to actually make up that, get back to the base, and this shows a hypothetical example where there's new tax base of $400,000. So that difference between $100,000 and $500,000, that $400,000, that's where the tax revenue comes from. So the city gets to keep all the tax revenue, as I said, from the other 4 taxing jurisdictions. So in this case, I just rounded up the mill rate to 30 mills. At one time, our mill rate was 0.36. Our mill rate now, I think, is 27 point something. So the mill rate has actually come down over the years for all those taxing jurisdictions. So in this example, we have $1,000 in revenue, that's new revenue, to pay off debt service that we incurred to do whatever stimulus we want to do to get this TIF off the ground. Is everybody clear on how that works? You set a base value, whatever the property value is, in year 0 of the TIF, that's $100,000. In year 5, 6, 7, it's $5,000. That delta, that difference is $400,000. You apply the mill rate to that, and the city gets 100% of that revenue for that $400,000. We use that to apply the debt service.
Debt service directly related
to that TIF. To that TIF, correct.
Question.
So, yes, sir.
Mike?
Yeah.
And can you use the mic, please?
Then you said that some TIFs can use to help other TIFs. Instead of doing that, could that TIF that's successful just pay their debt off early?
Yes.
So the successful TIFs are subsidizing unsuccessful TIFs.
Well, the question of whether they're unsuccessful, what they're trying to do is, as public policy, we'll use TIF 6 as an example. That was the downtown TIF. The city council decided to spend $14 million to expand the lacrosse center for economic development reasons. There were several $1 million that went into the Market Square ramp. We used TIF to help finance the city portion of the new Cameron Avenue Bridge. So when we first did that TIF, those projects weren't in there. The council decided we're going to spend about another about $20 million. So over time, over the life of TIF 6, it was about a 42-year payback. It wasn't going to pay off. But the council decided we want to do those projects. So we used that $1 million a year from TIF 1 to help retire TIF 6. So whether it's successful or not, I guess it's a matter of opinion, but council policy said, well, we're going to do these economic development projects. We're going to use TIF as a mechanism to pay that. Then we use TIF 1 to help retire that. Right now, again, the airport TIF could be retired, but we're using that. It's about, I think, $900,000 a year, also to speed up the timetable of retiring TIF 6. Dick, you had a question?
Well, I just, maybe it's evident, but maybe folks need to understand why a school district, for instance, would sign on to something like this. And it essentially is that the value of that property is frozen. It's not decreased, but whatever it was worth when the TIF was created, it continues to generate revenue for the school district based on that value. It doesn't
Correct.
get a piece of the increased value until it's paid off.
Correct,
Right.
but, and again, I don't understand, in the there's another factor. TIF school districts are made whole. What Dick is pointing out is that the VOTAC, the county school district, the state, and the city all are in this original, they don't lose revenue at original $100,000 of tax base. So why should districts sign on to a TIF? Well, it goes back to that clause I said is, but for the TIF, we wouldn't have new development. Overall, at the end of the TIF, there wouldn't be new tax base that all the taxing jurisdictions could benefit from. So, you know, if I don't have this particular slide, but if you look at, I have a slide of TIF 6, property down in the downtown. And, you know, we built the Valley View Mall in the 70s, even though we had a TIF downtown. Property value down in the downtown. Nobody wants that. The other taxing jurisdictions don't want property values to go down. Property owners don't want their property values to go down. It's equity. They're losing equity. We created TIF, and those property values went back up. So the question is, what's in it for those other taxing jurisdictions is they still get the benefit. They still get to collect taxes on that first $100,000. Once the debt is retired, everybody benefits from now that $400,000 of new tax base in this example.
One more question over here, and are you?
I think I just have a couple more slides here,
Okay.
Audrey.
Can you hold the question, or you want to go? Why don't you ask your question, and then we'll have Larry finish the presentation, and then have additional questions.
I had a couple conversations like this over the last couple of years, and I left them thinking that the TIF revenue was like in a lockbox and just used to repay debt, but then that's not right. It goes into the general fund, right?
No, it's used to retire, after the TIF is retired, yes. That new revenue from new development goes into the general fund for all those other taxing jurisdictions. The original money, if I'm understanding your question.
No, I'm talking about the increase that the city gets to keep.
Yeah.
I listened to the former mayor at a council meeting talk about TIFs and the advantage of the TIFs and why he likes TIFs, and saying that increased tax collection was used to help pay salaries for the police and the fire and to pay off debt. It was used, it goes in general fund and it's scattered all over the place.
Only after the TIF is closed out.
Explain in the course of the TIF, the increment that's being used is to pay off the improvements, the public improvements such as streetscaping and those kind of things.
Right. In the plan, that's what this slide is trying to show here. There's an tax base of $400,000 in this TIF. That generates $12,000 a year. That $12,000 a year is used to pay off whatever debt service we have related to streetscaping, street project, a developer incentive. Once that, whatever the last expenditure is made for that TIF, then you close out the TIF. Then all that $1,000 a year gets split up by the 5 taxing jurisdictions. So we get our $12, the county gets their $5, etc.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, you can come back to that. Have a discussion. I'm almost done here. So, like I said, I only had like 16 slides. So, these are current TIFs. We have a below central business district here, but the original TIF is retired. We have several other TIFs downtown. The airport industrial park TIF really paid primarily the airport. It was about a $5 million. You add the debt to that, it was about $8 million. This, plus we built an industrial park, all the employers that are up there, it was about $11 million expenditure overall when you include debt service. This thing is close to being paid off. Use the tax collections off this then to pay downtown as another example. Downtown we have the Marriott Hotel TIF, which paid for a lot of improvements to the pump house and streetscape around there. The original TIF 6, the Amtrak. We did a TIF up here for Duratec. International Business Park is a TIF. Park Plaza at the county is a TIF, the county-owned Park Plaza. We have another downtown TIF called the Gateway. Marsh Landing, which is the Three Rivers Plaza. The Quick Trip TIF, and the Gunderson Lutheran TIF.